The sun hung low over the red hills of Yukumo village, its light spilling like molten gold over thatched roofs and the winding footpaths. Smoke from roasting meat curled into the orange sky, and the sound of laughter carried through the breeze. Tonight was a night of joy, the Feast of Sisters, a celebration of unity in Chief Bako's household. At the center of it all stood Zuri, graceful and warm-hearted, the kind of woman whose smile softened even the hardest faces. She wore a simple white wrapper tied with a blue sash, her braids lined with beads that caught the firelight. Around her, children ran, women pounded yam, and the air was alive with the scent of roasted plantain and spicy pepper soup. Beside her, Kina, her stepsister, helped serve the guests, but her eyes told another story. Where Zuri's joy came from love, Kina's smile came from duty. The two shared the same father, Chief Bako, but different mothers. And though they grew under the same roof, their hearts had never truly met. As villagers gathered, they sang praises for Zuri's kindness. "She brings rain when others bring drought," an old woman said. "Her heart is clean like the morning river," added another. Each word of praise struck Kina's heart like a hammer. Her hands trembled slightly as she handed out bowls of food. She could feel the invisible wall between her and her sister, the wall built by the people's affection for Zuri and her father's constant praise. Later that evening, when the last drumbeat faded and the moon rose silver in the sky, Zuri knelt beside her father, helping him to his bed. Chief Bako smiled faintly, his eyes old and gentle. "Zuri," he said softly, "a good heart feeds many, but envy starves even the one who eats alone. Always remember that." Kina watched from the doorway. His words weren't for her, yet they pierced her deeper than any blade. When Zuri passed by, she reached out to her sister, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You worked so hard tonight, Kina." "Thank you." But Kina's reply was flat, forced. "It's what sisters do." Their eyes met, one filled with warmth, the other with quiet storm clouds. That night, long after everyone had gone to sleep, Kina sat outside under the palm tree, the moonlight painting her face in cold silver. In her hand, she held a half-eaten piece of roasted yam from the feast. She thought of how the villagers adored Zuri, how they whispered her name like a song, while Kina's name faded like dust. "They see her as light, and me as shadow," she whispered. A tear slipped down her cheek, but it hardened quickly into resolve. "If her light blinds them, then let me be the night that swallows it." As a cold wind brushed through the compound, she rose slowly. Her shadow stretched long behind her, merging with the darkness of the trees. From that moment, the Feast of Sisters, once meant to celebrate unity, became the beginning of a quiet war between blood and bitterness. The next morning, Yukumo village awoke with songs from roosters and the rhythm of pestles pounding yam in wooden mortars. But inside Chief Bako's compound there was no laughter, only the quiet hum of routine. Zuri rose early as always. She fetched water, swept the yard, and greeted every elder she met with her soft, respectful voice. Her stepsister, Kina, watched from the veranda, her eyes half-lidded, her smile half-forced. To the villagers, Kina seemed tired from the feast. To herself, she was a volcano beneath calm ground. By midday, the market of Yukumo was alive. Traders shouting, goats bleating, the smell of roasted corn drifting through the air. Kina walked through it like a shadow slipping between sunlight. Her mind was fixed on a single place, the hut at the edge of the market where the old herbalist lived. They called her Mama Ifa, the woman of roots and secrets. Some said she spoke to the forest itself. Others whispered that she could twist fate with her herbs. When Kina entered her dark hut, the air grew heavy with the smell of crushed leaves and smoke. Candles flickered on shelves lined with jars, each holding something strange: dried snakeskin, bones, powders of colors no one could name. Mama Ifa's voice was a whisper carried on the wind. "Child of the chief," she said without turning, "what brings you to the House of Shadows?" Kina hesitated. I want peace in my home," she began. The old woman laughed, a dry, knowing sound. "Peace? No one comes here for peace. Tell me the truth, Kina of Bako." The name struck her like lightning. Her heart pounded. "It's my sister," Kina finally said. "Zuri. She steals all the love, all the praise, all that should be mine. My father sees only her goodness. The village bows only to her. I'm invisible." Mama Ifa turned slowly. Her eyes were milky white, her skin wrinkled like the bark of an old tree. She studied Kina's face for a long moment, then smiled faintly. "Envy burns hotter than fire, child. It will eat you before it touches her." "I don't care." Kina snapped, her voice trembling. "I just want her to fall. To suffer as I have suffered." The old woman's eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. "There is a way," she whispered. "But the price is never gold, it is truth." Kina leaned closer. "What must I do?" Mama Ifa took a small gourd from her shelf and shook it gently. Inside, something thick and dark swirled. "This is Ekiro, the root of reflection. When it enters the blood, it shows the eater what hides in their heart. Some see beauty, others see beasts." Kina's eyes narrowed. "Will it harm her?" Mama Ifa's lips curved. "Only if she has something to hide." Kina paid with a golden earring, one Zuri had gifted her months ago, and tucked the gourd beneath her wrapper. As she left, Mama Ifa's voice followed her through the door. "Beware, Kina. The mirror of truth does not lie, but it does not choose sides either." That evening, as the sun bled red over the hills, Zuri prepared dinner in their father's compound. She hummed softly, an old tune their late mother used to sing. The smell of yam porridge filled the air. Kina entered quietly, her face calm, her voice sweet. "Sister, you've worked too hard. Let me serve you tonight." Zuri smiled, her heart open as always. "You? Serve me? That's new," she teased. Kina forced a laugh. "Even shadows can love the sun sometimes." She ladled a portion of food for Zuri, adding a few drops of the dark mixture into the bowl when no one was watching. Her hands trembled slightly, but her resolve did not break. When she brought the bowl to the table, their father was already there, blessing the food. Kina sat across from Zuri, her eyes fixed on every movement, the spoon, the steam, the first bite. Zuri smiled faintly. "It's delicious," she said. But as the night grew darker, the air around her began to change. Her laughter slowed. Her eyes seemed distant. She rose from her seat, clutching her head. The world spun before her. "Kina, what did you put in?" Before she could finish, her body shook, and then she fell, collapsing beside the fire. The room went silent. Only the crackle of flames filled the space. Kina's heart thundered in her chest. Her father rushed to Zuri's side, shouting her name. And Kina, with a trembling voice, whispered a single line under her breath. "Now they will see who the real daughter is." That night, thunder rolled far beyond the hills of Yukumo, even though no rain touched the land. Inside Chief Bako's compound, the lamps burned low, and whispers filled every corner. Zuri lay motionless on her mat. Her breathing was shallow, her skin glistened with sweat, and her lips murmured words no one could understand. Kina sat nearby, pretending to weep, though her eyes flickered with unease. She expected Zuri to die quickly to end the story before dawn, but something was wrong. Her pulse was steady. Her spirit did not fade. By midnight, when all others slept, Zuri's eyes snapped open. The firelight flickered, dancing shadows across the wall. Her heart pounded like a drum, not of fear but of awakening. She rose slowly, dizzy, the taste of metal in her mouth. Her reflection caught her eye, a small round mirror that hung beside her mother's old chest. It shimmered faintly, though no candlelight touched it. When she looked into it, she gasped. The face staring back was not her own. Her skin in the mirror was gray like ash. Her eyes glowed faintly white. Behind her reflection, strange figures moved, twisting, whispering like shadows alive. And among them one face stood out, Kina's. Zuri stumbled back, her breath ragged. But the mirror didn't stop. It followed her voice, her movement, whispering in tongues she couldn't understand until finally, words formed clear as wind. "Truth sleeps until poisoned blood wakes it." Zuri clutched her chest, her heart racing. What truth? The mirror pulsed once, and in it she saw visions, flashes of memory she had never lived, voices she had never heard. She saw her late mother giving birth to two girls under the light of the full moon, one crying with light, the other in silence. She saw Chief Bako holding only one child, wrapping her in fine cloth. She saw the second child taken away, hidden, forgotten. Her body shook violently. Tears streamed down her face. No, that cannot be. But the mirror whispered again, its surface rippling like water. "You carry truth. She carries envy. The poison is not death, it is reflection." By dawn, the house was quiet again, but Zuri did not sleep. She sat before the mirror, still and hollow-eyed, watching as it glowed softly in the morning light. When Kina entered the hut to check on her, she froze. Zuri's gaze pierced through her like a blade. "Good morning, sister," Zuri said, her voice eerily calm. Kina forced a smile. "You're awake. I feared for you all night." Zuri tilted her head slightly, still watching her. "Did you?" Kina blinked, pretending confusion. "Of course. I prayed you would recover." Zuri smiled faintly. "Then your prayers were heard." But tell me, sister, when you looked into the mirror last, what did you see? Kinna's brow furrowed. Mirror? What mirror? Zuri gestured toward it. The small, round glass shimmered as though alive. This one. Come. Look. Kinna hesitated. Something inside her screamed not to move, but Zuri's tone was soft, irresistible, like a lullaby. She took one step. Then another. The closer she came, the colder the air grew. When she finally looked into it, her reflection shifted. The glass warped and her image darkened, showing her face twisted with greed, her hands dripping with something dark and thick. Kinna gasped and staggered back. What is this witchcraft? Zuri's expression didn't change. Truth, she whispered. The kind that hides until it's fed. Kinna's heart pounded. You cursed me. Zuri rose slowly, her shadow stretching across the wall like something divine. No, sister. You cursed yourself when you poured that black poison into my food. Kinna's lips trembled. I didn't. But her voice failed her. The mirror flickered again, replaying the scene from the night before, Kinna's trembling hands, the dark liquid spilling into the bowl. Every detail clear as daylight. Kinna screamed and fell to her knees. No. Stop. The glass grew brighter, and in that moment, every lie, every act of jealousy she had buried deep rose to the surface. Zuri stepped closer. For the first time in years, her voice carried power, not of anger but revelation. Mama Ifa warned you. The mirror doesn't lie. It only shows what's inside. Kinna covered her ears, sobbing. Please forgive me. Zuri's expression softened for a heartbeat, but the mirror pulsed again, forcing her to face the truth of her own heart too. Forgiveness battled with vengeance. She whispered, the storm has just begun. Outside, the wind rose suddenly, howling through the trees. The fire cracked. The mirror glowed one last time, then went dark. When Chief Bako entered minutes later, both sisters were on the floor, one crying, one silent, and the mirror hung lifeless on the wall. But something had changed. For the first time, the truth no longer hid in shadows. It had found its voice. The next night, Yukumo village lay under a moonless sky. Crickets sang and the wind carried the faint smell of rain. Inside Zuri's hut, a single oil lamp flickered weakly. The mirror sat on the wooden stool before her, silent now, dull as any ordinary piece of glass. But the silence was heavy. Zuri could feel it, the kind that listens. Kinna had not spoken since the morning. She stayed hidden in her room, weeping softly, sometimes muttering to herself. Chief Bako tried to understand, but Zuri only said, let her rest. He didn't ask again. Now, alone, Zuri stared at her reflection. The night before had left her shaken, but curiosity burned in her chest stronger than fear. She had seen too much to doubt what the mirror could do, yet not enough to understand why. Her voice trembled as she whispered, if you hold truth, then show me what I must see. At first, nothing happened. The lamp crackled, threatening to die out. Then, suddenly, the mirror flickered to life, light spilling across the walls in soft silver ripples. And from within that shimmering surface, a shape began to form, faint, then clear. It was a woman. She looked like Zuri but older, her face serene, her eyes glowing like stars drowned in tears. Her hair, once black, seemed streaked with pale threads of moonlight. Zuri gasped and covered her mouth. Mother? The reflection smiled, a sorrowful, gentle smile. The hut filled with the scent of wild jasmine, her mother's favorite flower. My child, the voice echoed softly like wind through reeds. You have seen what envy can breed. Zuri fell to her knees. Why now, Mama? Why through this cursed glass? Her mother's spirit sighed, the sound like rustling silk. Because the truth you carry was buried before your birth. It waited for the poison to awaken it. Zuri's brow furrowed. What truth? The mirror shimmered again and images began to play, memories from long before her time. She saw her mother, Nadia, young and radiant, holding two newborn babies under the full moon. Both cried softly, one wrapped in white cloth, the other in brown. Behind her, an older woman, Kinna's mother, stood watching, her expression dark. Only one will live in light, she said coldly. The other will live in shadow. Zuri's heart clenched. There were two of us? Her mother nodded slowly. Yes, twins. You and Kinna. But the elders feared the prophecy, that twin daughters of one man would bring division to the house. Your father was pressured to hide one to protect his name. I refused. The image wavered, the memory darkened. Zuri saw shouting, tears, firelight flickering across faces. her mother clutching two infants, refusing to let one go. The older woman, Kinna's mother, prying the second baby from her arms, whispering, "She will grow under my name. She will never know." Then silence. The scene faded. Zuri covered her face, her chest heaving. "You mean, she is my sister by blood?" Her mother's reflection closed her eyes, a single tear of light rolling down her cheek. "Yes, child. Born of the same womb." But her heart was twisted by lies. She was told you were the cause of her mother's death, that your birth stole her joy. Zuri trembled, the weight of revelation pressing on her soul. So all this, her hatred, her envy, it began long before she knew me. Her mother's voice softened, almost breaking. Hatred feeds on the stories we choose to believe. She was made to believe pain was her inheritance. The lamp flickered again and thunder rumbled outside. Zuri looked into the mirror, eyes full of both fury and grief. "Then what do I do now, Mama? How do I end this?" The spirit's voice turned grave. The mirror showed her the truth of her soul, now it must show the truth of your mercy. Zuri's eyes widened. "Mercy? After what she's done?" "Yes," her mother whispered. "The curse began with bitterness, it can only end with forgiveness. But beware, my daughter, forgiveness is not weakness. It is fire turned inward. If you do not master it, it will consume you instead." The mirror pulsed one last time. The reflection began to fade, and her mother's last words drifted like smoke. "By dawn the mirror will choose. Light or shadow. Only your heart can decide." Then all was dark. The lamp went out. Outside lightning split the sky, but no rain came. Zuri sat alone, trembling, her tears mixing with the cold air. The truth was heavier than poison, yet somewhere inside, a spark of understanding glowed. She whispered to the empty room, "Forgiveness, even for her." And somewhere in the dark, the mirror shimmered faintly as if it heard. Morning came with a heavy sky. The air felt thick, the kind that warns of rain long before the clouds open. The people of Yukumo moved slowly through the village square, whispers following Zuri's name wherever she passed. Word had spread overnight. Zuri had survived the poison. Some called it a miracle. Others said witchcraft. But everyone waited for one thing, the truth. By mid-morning, Chief Bako summoned both daughters to the center of the compound. The elders sat in a half-circle, their walking sticks marking their authority. Women stood behind them, murmuring prayers. Children clung to their mothers' wrappers, eyes wide with curiosity. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Kinna stood barefoot, her face pale and streaked with dried tears. Her hair was tangled, her eyes swollen. Zuri, by contrast, was calm, too calm, the kind of stillness that hides deep fire beneath. Chief Bako's voice broke the silence. "My daughters, this house has become a place of whispers. Last night the gods kept death from visiting. But peace will not return until truth is spoken aloud." Kinna's knees trembled. Her gaze darted from her father to Zuri, to the crowd waiting like vultures for a confession. Zuri stepped forward and bowed her head. "Father, I will speak no lie in your presence. But before words are said, let the mirror be brought." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Everyone knew the tales, the mirror of truth that had belonged to Zuri's late mother. They said it could see beyond faces into hearts. Chief Bako frowned, uncertain. "What need have we for glass in this matter?" Zuri lifted her gaze. "Because words can be twisted, but the spirit cannot." Reluctantly he nodded. The mirror was brought from her hut and placed upon a stool in the open air. The sun struck its surface, and for a brief moment, the reflection of the village shimmered like water. Zuri turned to her sister, her voice calm but sharp as a blade wrapped in silk. "Kinna, the truth does not need to be forced. It only needs to be faced. Look into it." Kinna's lips quivered. I cannot." "Then you already know what it will show." The elders murmured. One of them, old Mama Tund, leaned on her stick. "Let her look. Let the gods decide." With trembling hands, Kinna turned toward the mirror. The crowd held its breath. At first she saw only herself, a frightened girl, broken and small. But then the image began to twist. Her reflection darkened, the sky in the mirror turned red, and her own eyes filled with shadows. She saw her hand pouring poison into Zuri's food. She saw her laughter turning into tears. She saw her mother's face, stern, whispering lies about Zuri stealing her birthright. The image was merciless. Kinna fell to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. "I did it. I poisoned her. I thought it would end her, but I only ended myself." The villagers gasped. Some shouted. Others wept. Chief Bako's staff fell from his trembling hands. His voice cracked as he spoke. My child, you carry your mother's shadow. But even shadows are part of light. Kina pressed her face to the ground. Father, I don't deserve forgiveness. I don't deserve to live among you. Zuri took a deep breath and stepped forward. Every eye turned to her. If punishment is what you seek, she said softly, then let the gods see that justice has already been served, through truth. The crowd murmured in confusion. She tried to kill you, someone cried. Let her be banished, another shouted. Zuri's voice rose above them, steady and filled with strange peace. If I send her away, her hatred will grow in the dark. But if she stays and faces her guilt, the curse will break for us both. She turned to her sister, kneeling before her. Kina, we share blood. The same pain, the same loss. You were deceived and I pitted myself. But no more. You will live, not as my rival but as my sister once more. The gods have seen my heart, and it will not hold vengeance. The square fell silent. Even the wind stopped. Chief Bako covered his face with his hands. Tears slipped through his fingers. Zuri, you have spoken like your mother. A low rumble of thunder echoed far away, though the sky had not yet broken. The elders stood, nodding in approval. Let this day mark the end of darkness in your house, said Mama Tund. For where truth is confessed and mercy is given, curses cannot linger. Kina wept so hard her body shook. She crawled to Zuri's feet and pressed her forehead against the dust. I don't deserve you, she whispered. Zuri bent down and raised her gently. Then become the sister you wish I had. That moment, two sisters, one guilty, one forgiving, burned itself into the memory of Yukumo village. For the first time in years, the people saw that true power was not in revenge but in restraint. As the thunder rolled once more, a light drizzle began to fall, soft, cleansing, almost holy. The mirror on the stool flickered faintly, then cracked right down the middle. No one spoke. But everyone understood. The curse had lifted. The first drops of rain fell like quiet forgiveness. They landed on the cracked earth of Yukumo, darkening the dust beneath the sisters' feet. Then the heavens opened fully and the long-awaited storm poured down. People scattered for shelter, but Zuri and Kina didn't move. They stood in the middle of the courtyard, drenched, faces lifted toward the sky as if the gods themselves were washing them clean. Chief Bako remained seated, rain soaking his robe, his eyes glistening. For the first time in years, he did not feel the weight of division between his daughters. Zuri spoke softly through the falling rain. Do you feel it, Kina? The land has been thirsty for too long, just like our hearts. Kina's lips trembled. How can you forgive me so easily after all I've done? Zuri smiled faintly, a tear lost in the rain. Forgiveness isn't easy. It's heavy like this rain. But once it falls, everything grows again. Kina broke down, her sobs swallowed by thunder. I don't deserve your mercy. Then earn it, Zuri said gently. Not with words, but with how you live from this day on. The villagers watched in awe. Two sisters, once enemies, now stood as symbols of something deeper than vengeance. The chief finally rose, leaning on his staff. His voice carried through the storm. My daughters, today the gods have judged not through blood, but through truth and rain. Let this storm mark a new beginning. He gestured to the people watching from their doorways. From this day forth, Zuri and Kina shall work side by side. Where one fell, the other shall lift her. Where one erred, the other shall teach. And may no heart in Yukumo hide poison again. The crowd murmured blessings. Women ululated. Men struck their staffs against the earth 3 times, a sign of renewal. As the rain slowed to a soft drizzle, Zuri walked toward the old garden behind the compound, a place her mother had once tended. The ground was wild now, overrun with weeds and forgotten roots. She knelt and touched the soil. It was wet, rich, alive again. This is where it begins, she whispered. Kina followed silently. You used to plant here with mother, didn't you? Zuri nodded. Yes. She said every seed carries both death and life. It must die before it grows. Maybe that's what we are now. Seeds. Kina knelt beside her, pressing her palm into the mud. Then let us grow together. For a long moment, the two sisters worked in silence, clearing weeds and turning the soil. The rain washed away the last traces of bitterness between them. By afternoon, a faint light pierced the clouds. The storm had passed. The air smelled of wet earth and renewal. Villagers began to emerge, smiling, relieved. Children ran barefoot through puddles. Laughter, the sound long absent from Yukumo, filled the air again. Inside the compound, Zuri brought out a clay pot filled with what remained of the poison stew, now harmless after the rain had diluted it. She poured it into the earth near the garden's edge. "Let what once brought death now feed life," she said quietly. Chief Bako watched his daughters, pride softening his face. He turned to the elders. "When my wife died, I let grief blind me. I allowed jealousy and lies to divide my home. But my daughters have taught me that healing begins not in the body but in the heart." The oldest elder nodded. "Then the curse of your household is broken, Bako. The rain has spoken. Let peace remain." As the evening sun broke through the fading clouds, its light caught the broken mirror lying near the stool. The crack in its surface glimmered like a golden scar, not ugly but beautiful in its imperfection. Zuri picked it up carefully. "Even broken things can still reflect truth," she said. Kina smiled faintly. "And even poisoned hearts can learn to love again." The two sisters embraced, a true embrace not born of duty or guilt but of forgiveness freely given. Above them the last drops of rain fell, soft as blessings. That night, a calm silence rested over Yukumo. The storm had cleansed more than the land, it had purified souls. From her window, Zuri looked out at the garden. The soil shimmered under the moonlight. She could almost hear her mother's voice on the wind. "My daughter, the strongest revenge is to heal." Zuri smiled. The pain was still there, faint like an old scar, but it no longer ruled her. For the first time she slept peacefully. The next morning dawned heavy and gray. The sky hung low over Yukumo as if it too carried secrets waiting to be spilled. Zuri awoke weak but alive. The bitter taste still clung to her tongue. Her head pounded, and her vision swam with spots of light. She lay on her woven mat, sweat-soaked and trembling. Outside her hut she could hear whispers, sharp, fearful and urgent. "They say she almost died in her sleep. Who could have done such a thing? That girl Kina has been acting strange lately." The words drifted through the window like poisoned smoke. Zuri's breath trembled. She knew. Her heart already knew, but her mind refused to accept it. Still, deep inside, the truth clawed its way to the surface. It was her. My own sister. Zuri tried to sit up but collapsed back onto the mat. The world spun. A pang of nausea struck her, sharp and cold. Moments later, the door creaked open. Kina stepped inside carrying a small wooden bowl of porridge. Her eyes were red. From crying or from guilt, Zuri couldn't tell. "Drink this," Kina whispered, kneeling beside her. "It will make you stronger." Zuri stared at the bowl. The smell of herbs filled the air, the same scent she'd noticed in the poisoned food. Her voice came out soft, broken but piercing. "You want to finish what you started?" Kina froze. What do you mean?" "Don't lie." Zuri's eyes lifted, glowing with quiet fury. "You mixed it. You poisoned me." Kina dropped the bowl, the porridge spilling across the floor like pale blood. Her lips trembled. I didn't mean for it to go so far," she stammered. "I only wanted to make you sick. To slow you down." Because of what?" Zuri's voice rose, trembling with pain and disbelief. "Because I worked hard? Because people praised me?" Kina's tears broke. "Because you had everything. Father's love, the people's respect, the songs, the stories. You walked through the market and everyone greeted you like a queen while I—" She choked. "I was invisible." Zuri stared at her, the sister she had shared laughter, bread and childhood secrets with. And now she saw a stranger hollowed out by envy. "You could have had it all too," Zuri said quietly. "But your heart chose darkness." Kina fell to her knees. Please forgive me. I don't know what came over me. I've been haunted since that night." Zuri didn't answer. She turned her gaze to the window where sunlight broke weakly through the clouds. "You poisoned my body, Kina. But it's your soul that's dying." That afternoon the truth reached Chief Bako. Servants whispered. One of them had seen Kina mixing herbs in the kitchen late at night. Another had heard her arguing with Zuri days before. The chief summoned both daughters to the public courtyard. The entire village gathered. Tension hung like the storm in the air. Zuri stood pale and trembling, still weak but proud. Kina stood beside her, eyes lowered, her hands clasped tightly together. The chief's voice thundered through the silence. "My blood tried to kill my blood. My heart tried to destroy itself. Tell me, my daughter, is this true?" Kina's lips quivered. "Father, I—" "Speak the truth," he roared. Kina broke. She fell to the ground, clutching her face. "Yes, I did it. I gave her the herbs, but I never meant to kill her. I only wanted her to suffer for a moment. To feel small." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Women covered their mouths. Men shook their heads in disbelief. Chief Bako's staff struck the earth with a crack. You brought shame upon our house. You turned jealousy into blood. He turned to Zuri. My daughter, what punishment shall we give her? Zuri's eyes glistened. The whole village leaned in, expecting fury, revenge, something brutal. But instead Zuri spoke softly. Let her live with what she's done. Let her eat the food she meant for me. Let her remember that bitterness poisons only the one who swallows it. A stunned silence followed. Then murmurs of awe swept through the crowd. The chief bowed his head. Your heart is greater than mine. He faced Kinna. From this day you will serve your sister, not as a slave but as one who learns humility. The gods will decide your forgiveness. Kinna nodded weakly, tears pouring down her face. The crowd dispersed slowly, the weight of the revelation heavy in their hearts. That night, thunder rumbled in the distance, a storm gathering on the horizon. The wind howled through the trees like a voice calling out judgment. Inside her hut, Zuri lay awake. The rain hadn't yet fallen, but she could smell it in the air, that metallic electric scent of cleansing. Let the rain come, she whispered. Let it wash this poison away. And in the dark, lightning flashed, illuminating her face, calm but fierce. Because Zuri knew now, the storm wasn't her enemy. It was her ally. The night that followed was one the villagers would never forget. The air grew thick and electric, carrying the scent of an oncoming storm. Even the birds had gone silent, their nests heavy with dread. Zuri sat alone in her hut, staring at the wooden bowl Kinna had brought earlier, the one that once held poison. Now it sat clean, empty and harmless. She had washed it herself, as if washing away the memory of betrayal. But the ache inside her heart lingered. She could still hear her sister's cries echoing in her mind, "Please forgive me, Zuri." And though she had spoken words of mercy before the crowd, the pain hadn't left her. Forgiveness, she realized, wasn't something spoken once. It was something earned through time and tears. Outside, thunder cracked across the heavens like the voice of the gods themselves. The first drops of rain splattered against the roof, slow, heavy, deliberate. Then suddenly the skies opened wide and rain poured in torrents, soaking the village in moments. The people of Yukumo rushed to cover their cooking fires and save their drying grains, but the storm was relentless. Lightning danced across the horizon, fierce and white, as if the heavens were writing their anger in light. Inside the chief's courtyard, Kinna sat in silence, her clothes drenched, her eyes hollow. Her hands trembled as she tried to sweep away the rainwater flooding the floor, but her strength failed her. Chief Bako stood nearby, watching with eyes full of sorrow. The gods see everything, he murmured. Perhaps the storm is not meant to destroy, but to cleanse. He turned and walked into the rain, leaving Kinna alone in the flickering firelight. Meanwhile, Zuri stepped outside her hut, letting the storm lash against her skin. The cold rain washed through her braids, through her tears, through the very weight that sat upon her spirit. The thunder rolled again, deep, powerful, commanding. She whispered to the storm, "If there is justice in the sky, then let this storm cleanse not only her sin but my pain." And it was as if the heavens heard her. The rain grew softer, but the wind carried voices, murmurs from the villagers who watched from their huts. They saw Zuri standing alone in the downpour, head lifted high, arms outstretched, unafraid. Her soaked dress clung to her body, but she looked radiant, her face lit by lightning's glow. Someone whispered, "She stands with the gods." Another said, "The storm bows to her." Then came a sudden crash of thunder that split the sky in two. A tree near Kinna's hut burst into flames from a lightning strike. Villagers screamed and ran toward it, trying to douse the fire with buckets of water. The flames hissed and crackled, orange against the black rain. Kinna stumbled out into the courtyard, her face pale with terror. She fell to her knees in the mud, hands lifted toward the sky. "Spare me," she cried. "Please, I have learned my lesson. Forgive me." Zuri heard her voice through the storm. Slowly she walked toward her sister, her steps steady, her eyes calm. Rain poured over both of them as they faced each other under the burning tree. Zuri's voice was soft but carried like thunder. "You ask the gods for mercy, Kinna. But you must also show it, to yourself." Kinna trembled, choking on sobs. "I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see your face when I fed you that food. I hear your breath dying. How can I forgive myself?" Zuri knelt beside her and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then let the storm forgive you. Let it wash it all away." At that moment, the fire on the tree hissed violently, then extinguished as a bolt of rainwater poured over it. The flames died instantly, leaving only steam rising into the air. A gasp rippled through the crowd. The two sisters stood side by side in the aftermath, one guilty, one wronged, both baptized by the storm's cleansing rain. By dawn the sky had cleared. The earth smelled new, fresh and alive. The birds sang again as if the world had been reborn. Zuri stood on the hill overlooking the village. The sunlight touched her golden-brown skin, and for the first time in days she felt peace. Behind her, Kina approached quietly, her eyes still swollen from crying. She didn't speak. She only knelt and placed her head against Zuri's feet, not in shame but in surrender. Zuri looked down at her and said softly, "Rise, Kina. The storm is over." Kina rose slowly, her face wet with tears, but her gaze steadier than before. Together, they looked out at the village that shimmered in the new morning light. And though they didn't hold hands, the silence between them carried something stronger than words, a promise that the past would no longer define them. That day, the villagers told stories of what they had seen, how the storm had come like judgment and left like grace. How the two sisters stood in the rain, not as enemies but as daughters of the same sky. And some swore that when the lightning struck the tree they heard a voice, low and powerful, whisper through the storm, "Forgiveness is the mightiest revenge." The morning after the storm felt like a dream the village had woken from, heavy, quiet, and new. The earth glistened under the sun, the air rich with the smell of wet soil and new beginnings. Water still dripped from the palm leaves and small children ran barefoot through puddles, laughing as if to chase away the memory of thunder. Zuri stood outside her hut, wrapping a fresh cloth around her shoulders. The world around her looked cleaner, softer, even the birds seemed to sing with purpose. Her heart, once heavy with betrayal and bitterness, now felt light. The storm hadn't just washed away the poison Kina had fed her, it had washed the poison out of her soul too. As she lifted her eyes toward the sky, she whispered, "Thank you, ancestors, for turning my pain into peace." Inside the compound, the villagers gathered slowly, their faces still carrying awe from what they had witnessed. No one could forget how the lightning struck, how the flames died instantly, or how the two sisters had stood side by side in the rain. To them it was not a coincidence, it was divine. Chief Bako walked to the center of the courtyard, his old frame steady, his eyes soft with pride and humility. His voice carried over the crowd. "Let this day be remembered not for the storm that came, but for the peace that followed. My daughters have shown us that forgiveness is stronger than vengeance. May their story be told for generations." The villagers clapped their hands in agreement. Women ululated, and the men nodded solemnly, some even wiping tears from their cheeks. Kina stood at the edge of the crowd, head bowed. Her once bright wrappers were now dull and torn, her hair undone, her pride broken. But there was something new in her eyes, a fragile glow of repentance. As Zuri approached her, a hush fell over the people. The crowd parted as the two sisters faced each other again, this time under the soft morning light instead of the harsh storm. Zuri reached into the basket she carried and pulled out a fresh calabash of water. Without a word, she poured it gently into Kina's hands. "Drink," Zuri said softly, "and let this be the last time your thirst comes from regret." Kina's lips trembled as she raised the calabash. She drank, slow, deliberate sips, and when she lowered it, tears fell freely down her cheeks. "You should have let me suffer," Kina said. "I tried to destroy you." Zuri shook her head. "You tried to destroy love, but love cannot be killed." For the first time, Kina smiled. It was faint, almost broken, but real. That afternoon, Zuri gathered the village women to help repair the homes damaged by the storm. She worked beside them, carrying mud bricks, thatching roofs, and sharing laughter. Children ran to her with flowers, calling her Mama Peace. Kina quietly joined in. She fetched water, mended baskets, and cooked food for the workers. Though some villagers still eyed her with suspicion, Zuri's presence by her side changed their hearts. "If Zuri can forgive her," one woman whispered, "then who are we to hold anger?" The gossip faded. The stare softened. Slowly, the community accepted both sisters again. One as a symbol of grace, the other as a symbol of redemption. As the sun began to set, painting the horizon in streaks of gold and crimson, the villagers gathered again. This time it wasn't for a feast of rivalry but a feast of renewal. Drums rolled across the open square. The scent of roasted maize and pepper soup filled the air. Children danced while the elders clapped to the rhythm. Chief Bako rose once more, holding a carved wooden staff. "Let it be known," he said, his voice trembling with emotion, "that in Yukumo, we do not judge by who sinned, but by who stood up after sinning. My daughters have both stood tall. One showed strength through love, and the other found love through forgiveness. The people cheered, and for the first time Kina was not left in the shadows. She and Zuri stood side by side as the drummers played. The firelight danced on their faces, one glowing with serenity, the other with newfound humility. Kina turned to Zuri and whispered, "You are the reason I still stand." Zuri smiled. "No, sister. We stand because the storm chose to spare us." Later that night, as the fire burned low, Zuri sat outside with her father, the air quiet except for the crickets. "You've become more than I dreamed, my child," Chief Bako said softly. "You have taught us that true power is not in revenge but in mercy." Zuri rested her head on his shoulder and whispered, "I only gave what I wanted to receive, Papa." He smiled. "And that is why your name will never fade." The next morning, a villager carved a wooden symbol on the great tree that stood at the edge of the compound, two intertwined vines growing upward toward the sun. It became the mark of the sisters, a sign of forgiveness and strength. Every traveler who passed Yukumo was told the story of two sisters, one who poisoned with envy and one who healed with love, and how even the gods sent a storm to cleanse their hearts. Years passed in Yukumo village, and time, like a slow river, carried away the wounds of the past, but left behind the stones of memory. The sisters, Zuri and Kina, became more than just names in a household. They became symbols whispered in songs, woven into tales, and taught to children under the glow of the moonlight. The once broken courtyard where envy had almost destroyed love was now a place of peace. Flowers grew along the fence where the storm had beaten the ground bare. The mango tree, struck by lightning, had healed, its branches thick with green leaves, its fruits heavy with sweetness. Zuri sat beneath it one afternoon, weaving baskets with the younger girls of the village. Her laughter floated like music, calm, light, and full of life. Though she had seen betrayal, pain, and near death, her heart shone brighter than ever. She had learned that peace was not a gift given by others, it was a seed watered by one's own tears. Kina, her stepsister, walked up carrying a pot of water. Her once proud face now carried a gentleness born from humility. Her eyes no longer burned with jealousy, instead they reflected a quiet devotion. She knelt beside Zuri, handing her the pot. "You used to fetch water for me," Zuri said softly. "Now you bring it still." Kina smiled. "This time I bring it because I want to, not because I have to." They both laughed, a sound that healed the air. In the evenings, children gathered in front of Mama Abibi, the oldest woman in the village, who told stories that kept history alive. On one such night, when the moon was full and round, she began her tale with the words everyone loved to hear. "Long ago in this very village there lived two sisters." The children leaned forward, eyes wide, hands cupped under their chins. One had a heart like the morning sun, pure and kind. The other carried shadows of envy. But the gods, in their wisdom, sent a storm not to destroy them, but to show them the strength of forgiveness. Her voice cracked, but her smile remained steady. That storm washed away not just the poison of one sister, but the bitterness of both. And from their tears, peace was born. A little girl raised her hand. "Mama Abibi, is it true that the gods spoke that night?" The old woman chuckled. "Ah, child, when lightning speaks and the heart listens, is that not the voice of the gods?" The children gasped and giggled, their imaginations alive with flashes of light and roaring skies. Years later, when Zuri grew older, she was chosen as the village matron, a position of respect and guidance. Her words settled disputes, her hands blessed marriages, and her wisdom guided even the elders. Whenever people asked her how she found such peace, she would say, "Because I forgave, and forgiveness returned to me tenfold." Kina stood always beside her, not as a shadow anymore, but as light reflected from the same flame. She became known for her humility, for caring for orphans and the poor, and for serving without pride. When travelers came to Yukumo, they heard not gossip or judgment, but the story of two sisters who turned hate into harmony. And every traveler left carrying the story like a flame in their heart. One quiet morning, Zuri rose before dawn and climbed the small hill behind the village, the place where she had once stood and whispered her pain into the wind. Now she stood there again, older, wiser, the sunrise painting her in gold. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you, ancestors, for making me the storm's child. You broke me only to make me whole again." Kina joined her moments later, standing beside her in silence. Together they watched the light climb the horizon. "We started as rivals," Kina said quietly, "but now we rise as one." Zuri smiled. The world always needed both, light and shadow, to make dawn. When they both passed on many years later, the people of Yukumo built two stone figures under the mango tree. One faced east, the other west, two sisters watching the sunrise and sunset forever. Between them, carved into stone, were the words, "Forgiveness is the mightiest revenge." And so, the story of Zuri and Kinna became legend, told in markets, whispered in courtyards, sung by griots beside the fire. Even generations later, whenever storms rolled across the sky, the villagers would look up and say, "The sisters are washing the world clean again." And somewhere in the wind, soft and eternal, the voices of two sisters could almost be heard, laughing together. Because though poison had once touched their lips, truth fed their revenge and love crowned their story forever.